reality.
But during this Blackground co-publishing deal, all of everybody who was signed to Noontime was invited to New York to work with Aaliyah, except for me. And except for the Aaliyah sessions that were going on in New York, for the people who were there who weren't officially signed to Blackground, they got shipped to Atlanta. So it was like we was in Alcatraz. And it was me and one other guy that they shipped from wherever they was working with Aaliyah, and they shipped us both in this place for 30 days. It was just me and him in this studio for 30 days. And that other artist is Tank.
What?
Shout out to Tank.
Wow.
It was just me and Tank in Noontime Studios for 30 days while Noontime was in New York working with Aaliyah. Mind you, Tank wasn't officially signed to Blackground, and he was going through some limbo in his deal then because he was anxious for his record to come out, but they wasn't giving him no attention. So they shipped his ass off. You go to Atlanta. We doing this deal with Noontime, blah, blah, blah. Me and Tank found each other in Atlanta for 30 days, and we damn near did 30 songs.
Concrete reality.
We interrupt this program to bring
And you say third coast. Yeah. It's such a delight to be here tonight, utilizing the gift of song that I've been blessed with to bring to y'all so much joy. And you know, like I know, don't nothing bring more joy than a clean-cut New Orleans boy, huh? They say I wouldn't do it again.
And it was like, okay, cool. At this point, I still wanted to be signed to Noontime, but I didn't want to live in Atlanta. So I remember going to Noontime, I was like, yeah, can I still be signed to y'all and living in LA? And they was like, yeah, you know, you'll get your advance and all that, but living in LA is much more expensive, and all the artists come here to the studio to work with us here. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then...
When did you officially sign with Noontime?
It's a little bit of time after this.
Okay, a little bit of time.
I mean, it's a minute, right? B. Cox just getting his bones. He's going over to JD's now, right? So Carmonique suggests I stay there, and she's also trying to convince Noontime to sign me. Noontime is like, he reminds us of Anthony Dent. We already got a Dent. We don't need to sign no more, right? They didn't want to sign me. But they let me work in the C room with B. Cox, collaborating while Ideal was there. So my time was basically up, right? Bryan's had a one-bedroom studio apartment, and he had all his boys from Houston there as well, trying to get on too. I'm talking about Trevor and Troy Clark. Robert Hodge was out there with us.
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
Teron Mitchell came down. Marco Valian came down. So this is all the guys, and I named at least 5
in a studio
outside of B. Cox, including myself. Scooby was alive then. Scooby came down, right? In a one-bedroom studio in Atlanta, and B. Cox was so gracious enough to let us all crash and stay there.
Y'all pledging.
Right?
Right.
But me and B. Cox were the only ones in Noontime that was actually like really ambitiously making beats for this, that, and the other. So it came around this time, and this had to be within a relative period of about 6 months to a year, maybe after Ideal rolled out. So I get dropped off in Atlanta. Y'all don't understand. Basically just dropped off there. I wanted to be there, but nobody wanted me there. So I'm still having to make my way, and I'm still having to gain approval, and I'm still having to prove myself, right? And this opportunity 6 months to a year later came up where Noontime was doing a deal with Blackground Records on a publishing side, co-publishing joint venture. And Blackground opened up the opportunity for Noontime to come up to New York and work with Aaliyah. And so at that time, a lot of distractions, not distractions, what can I call them? A lot of obstacles were being thrown in my way. One of them was I wasn't officially signed. I remember they used to have these music conventions called Impact. I really felt like I was like Cinderella at Noontime. Like I would get the scraps, right? And I would have to make something out of the scraps for myself. I remember them assigning me this group, Absolute, right? And Absolute was a group where it was a Noontime group. They was trying to get them signed. Nobody wanted to sign them. They had deals after deals, and nobody was really messing with them. But Noontime was so invested in them, they just wouldn't stop. So eventually, Noontime got a deal with Atlantic Records, and they put out Absolute. And the first single was a single that me and B. Cox did. Now, the only reason that first single came out to be that it was not only the fact that B. Cox also produced it. I wasn't signed to Noontime officially at that time. Or maybe I was at that time. I might be getting it mixed up. But during this Blackground co-publishing deal, all of everybody who was signed to Noontime was invited to New York to work with Aaliyah, except for me. And except for the Aaliyah sessions that were going on in New York, for the people who were there who weren't officially signed to Blackground, they got shipped to Atlanta. So it was like we was in Alcatraz. And it was me and one other guy that they shipped from wherever they was working with Aaliyah, and they shipped us both in this place for 30 days. It was just me and him in this studio for 30 days. And that other artist is Tank.
What?
Shout out to Tank.
Wow.
It was just me and Tank in Noontime Studios for 30 days while Noontime was in New York working with Aaliyah. Mind you, Tank wasn't officially signed to Blackground. And he was going through some limbo in his deal then because he was anxious for his record to come out, but they wasn't giving him no attention. So they shipped his ass off. You go to Atlanta. We doing this deal with Noontime, blah, blah, blah. Me and Tank found each other in Atlanta for 30 days, and we damn near did 30 songs.
Putting in work.
Right? At the same time, there was this Sony group called 7 Mile that was from Detroit that flew in maybe a week before the New York trip happened. And I ended up making this track for them. I made 2 tracks for them. Sony Music ended up paying $30,000 for these 2 tracks. So Noontime started paying me through what they was doing on behalf of me, but I still wasn't officially signed. Still, they ain't had my Donnie Scantz contract yet. Bryan had gotten signed at that point because Jagged Edge was like serious about what they was doing with him. And they was like, we not gonna let JD nab him up. Bryan was signed at this point. Especially with Get Gone being a hit and all that, Bryan been signed. I still wasn't signed yet. This was maybe 6 months, a year into it. I make this track for 7 Mile. They pay $30,000 for the record. They leave with the record. For some reason, 7 Mile gets dropped like maybe 2 months later. Wow. Right off. But before, and the 7 Mile thing happened, right? Because Chris Hicks came into the studio room and he was like, I need you to make this track with guitars, but it needs to be a little funky. And we think you're the one to do it. It needs to have like, you know, a little Stevie Wonder feel, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, Chris, I got it. So Kevin Hicks also got left in Atlanta, the guitar player. So it was me, Kevin Hicks, and Tank.
It sounds like a monster.
I did this track. 7 Mile gets dropped. The track was already on a DAT that got sent to New York of all the Noontime tracks. But my track on that DAT wasn't labeled D Scantz. But they played the DAT in there. Everybody wanted to write to this track. They ended up writing to the track. Jonte writes on it and Jazze Pha writes on it. Jonte writes the first verse in the hook. Jazze Pha writes the second verse. They don't know who did the track. I think Jonte even wrote on the track because he thought Jazze Pha did the track.
The music industry, boy. Go ahead.
They write the song on Aaliyah. Aaliyah cuts it. Everybody loves it. They don't know who did the track.
And still don't know D Scantz did it.
They come back to Atlanta and Billy Calloway happened to be the A&R. He's like, oh, this is D Scantz track. Because he was like A&R to put all the stuff on the DAT. Boom. Next thing I know, like I'm getting calls like, yo, we just messed up the deal with Blackground. They don't want none of the Aaliyah records.
What?
So wow. My record got cut up there. Come Over got cut up there, which was the B. Cox Teddy Bishop record. I Miss You, which was another Teddy Bishop record that eventually came out after her death. All of these records were written in New York. And Noontime blew the deal with Blackground somehow. And Blackground was like, we don't want none of y'all Aaliyah records no more. So Aaliyah was on the shelf for us.
Damn.
Dun, da, da.
Wow.
Then comes Priority Records. And they was like, hey, we heard this Aaliyah record that we want a license for this movie next Friday. We were like, you mean like Friday, Ice Cube Friday?
That Friday.
It was like, yeah. So Noontime basically owned the licensing rights to this record because they controlled the rights of me. They controlled the rights of Jazze Pha. They controlled the rights of Jonte Austin. So they was like, oh, we could license y'all this record, even though Blackground doesn't want to mess with us on any Aaliyah records. So Noontime pulled a business move and they licensed the record to Priority. This record cost $43,000. And mind you, this was the first record at this particular point. Noontime is like, oh shit, we got to sign this guy now. Because he has a major record on a major artist, any publisher is going to give him buku money now if we don't sign him now for these little little coins we want to give him. You know, but however, Noontime created the space, they created the opportunity, and they were basically responsible for creating, you know, the relationship to even get the song cut. So I wasn't officially signed. The Aaliyah song was cut, and I wasn't really getting done really right, all the way right. At least I felt that at that time. So I felt like I was a free agent. I was like, oh, I'm running around here. I got the Aaliyah song, nigga. Yeah. Right. So nonetheless, next Friday picks up the record. Blackground makes it so prohibitively hard for them to clear Aaliyah for the performance of the record. And guess what they charged for Aaliyah's performance fee?
Whew, $1 million.
It could have been, but at this time it was $200,000. That was unheard of. The record cost $243,000 at this time. Now, it was the biggest record a new producer could have ever gotten paid that much money for. So they paid Aaliyah $200,000. They paid Noontime $43,000. Of that $43,000, I split that with Kevin Hicks, right? And you know, so it was still a good tidbit of money. So best believe Noontime used my money to give me my advance that they eventually signed me with.
Business.
Wow.
Wow.
The music industry, boy.
They
music
gained the
industry.
right to control 50% of my publishing interests.
Wait, you
For-
said wait,
for-
say that again?
They secured the right to own 50% of my publishing interests at this time.
Damn.
And it was crazy because all the while when I wasn't signed to Noontime, right, me and B. Cox took this trip up to New York and I wasn't signed yet. And we had a meeting with Sony Music and they found out I had the Aaliyah record. Sony Music offered me $350,000 on the spot. It was like, come over here, let us publish you. And $350,000.
You took that.
Huh?
No, you didn't. I know.
I got a phone call that said, hey, we heard that you had a meeting with Sony. If you take that deal, we're going to take your track off that Aaliyah song. And we gonna let-
Ooh.
Fucked up.
Oh, yeah. It was, oh, man.
The industry, man.
It's crazy. So fearful of that, as well as the fact that I really loved being at Noontime. Don't get it twisted. I love the producers. I love the production there. You know what I'm saying? I loved everything I was learning from that company. So I wanted to be there, although I knew that I was not wanted there.
Yeah,
right?
you want to be loved, you want to be accepted in there.
So I forced their hand. You know, they signed, you know, an administrative publishing deal with me for $35,000. That's a long stretch from $350,000.
Ooh, that's a long stretch. God damn, ain't it good business? Whew.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a Hellcat.
Yeah.
But okay, that's my story. It's about 10 million other stories like that.
Yeah. Fact.
Yeah.
Fact.
So, and think about the entrance into the business. It's like, at what point would I want to recoup $35,000 or would I want to recoup $350,000? That becomes a real question, because if I'm only on the hook for $35,000 and I have a hit record, I'm no longer on the hook anymore.
True.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But the crazy thing is we break these records down in percentages and whatnot. You realize that 100% of a record that you're supposed to write in your publishing deal that says 100%, it's automatically broken down to 50% if you only do the music, right? So then if you're co-producing it with somebody too, then if you want to be fair, then you're breaking that co-production in half too.
25%.
And that's 25%. So that's only a quarter of your delivery requirement. So if you have a 3-song deal, your delivery requirement, your deal instantly becomes 6.5 songs, close to 7 songs that you have to release in order for you to get the credit that you need to have your releases on these publishing companies. At that time, publishing deals are much different now, but during that time, it was a lot of craziness. So, and we were young. We were impressionable. We were in our early 20s. Like, you know, having a hit record on Aaliyah was the only thing that mattered to me, because I visioned that. I wanted to work with Aaliyah. I wanted to. I manifested that. So when it came, I couldn't let the opportunity go. I took the 35, and I enjoyed being at Noontime when it was enjoyable. You know, so
did it ever get to that point where it was enjoyable to be there?
It was always enjoyable. It was always exciting as an impressionable 20-something-year-old, right? It was always enjoyable.
As long as you're doing the music.
Even when it was dangerous, it was enjoyable.
You said dangerous.
Yeah.
How was it dangerous?
Yeah, hold on. Did Suge
Wait,
come?
you trying to
Did
say
Suge come holler at
I
me or
mean,
something?
we were in an era of the music business at the end of the day where like the return that you would get on those types of opportunities created a culture where you were around things that weren't necessarily just about the music.
Right.
You know, and you know, without going all the way into detail, yeah, it was some gangster shit popping. You know, Suge and them story is just, you know, the tip of the iceberg. You know what I'm saying? We were daily.
Wait, because I'm thinking R&B, and you know, when you think R&B, you thinking soft, relaxed, nice, calm.
But you're in the periphery of companies like BMF. You're doing business with these people daily. Like, you see what I'm saying? So you mess around, say, do, not include the right person on, you know, this, that, and the other. Like,
It's repercussions.
It's beef. It's beef now.
it could be. I'm not saying that it was.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it could be.
Yeah.
Well,
And
I
in
mean,
some cases, it might have.
we always got to weigh in, even when, you know, blues, early R&B people, you know, we watched Temptation Story. We watched all these different stories. These gunplay has been no secret. You know, Muddy Waters back in the day.
Right.
I mean, it's gunplay has been no stranger to the music industry. Back when Ice Cube was breaking up in the scopes, or was that
Right.
Priority?
All those stories of the world, even when
You know,
TLC
I mean,
went up and
yeah.
Master Records and stood on the desk, you know, it was
Yeah, it's always been some gangster shit in the music industry. There's always been some gangster shit. So we ain't gonna act like we like I ain't have to used to go check in and get patted down. I used to go to 7303. And third, what was that? It wasn't Third Ward. It was off 288.
Yeah, I know
When I
that
first
video.
started going up there.
Ronnie.
Yeah, when I first.
Ronnie.
Ronnie Bookman. When Ronnie Bookman got beat up by allegedly. I'm gonna say that allegedly.
If you're gonna talk about that, y'all cut that out though. We're not gonna talk about Ronnie Bookman. No Rap a Lot. No Jay.
Hey, look, the ghost is in the building.
I don't want no.
Cutting that out.
We don't want no smoke.
Let's just say I was in the heart of all that when that was going on. Yeah, I was in the heart of all that. I was in yeah. And so I seen it all. But we're gonna cut that out because we ain't
but I mean, true story, you know, while we got the Stars, you know, BMF documentary coming out. Shouts out to 50 Cent. Shouts out to you know, the BMF story on Stars. I think that's super dope. I remember having a phone call with Big Meech in jail about an artist that I was working with.
Wow.
This was a nice complimentary phone call.
Oh yeah, it was we're gonna take care of you. We're going to make sure you straight. You just make sure you go do that hit with our guy in Miami.
Gotcha.
Flew me to Miami. They gave me a brown paper bag full of cash.
Oh, the infamous brown paper bag.
Oh yeah.
Damn.
And it was like, how much
brown paper bag.
And I gave them a nice little 5-figure amount, and it was right there in cash.
Right there.
From the artist that never came out.
Yeah.
So let's move forward out the dark period of.
We out the dark period.
Let's go. Move forward.
What I want to know, D, about your business interests, you know, about fan base. Tell us about that.
Well, fan base, okay, let's talk about that. So in social media, right, you know, you have the Instagrams, you have the Facebooks, right? You have these media companies who are now benefiting off of the social content of content creators. It's, you know, it's primarily Black content creators. And, you know, you might see them, the TikToks monetizing, you know, the white content creators in a way in which the Black content creators get overlooked. And so Isaac Hayes, who is the son of the Isaac Hayes, he is the founder of Fanbase. And Fanbase basically is a subscription-based platform for content creators, and all of us now are content creators. That's what we are. The pandemic has basically thrust all of us into creating content some kind of way. You know, you're on a Zoom call, you can record that Zoom call, it could become an instructional video. You know, like we are making content one way or the other. If you're sharing your dog on Instagram, now they want you to make reels. But the point is no compensation was made. And so Isaac created a platform that allowed content creators to monetize their fan base, whether your fan base is on Instagram or whether your fan base is on TikTok. You could bring them to this centralized location and you could create exclusive content for them. And so the fan base is not only a platform that has the sharing option as Instagram does, but it also has the direct to voice option like Clubhouse. And it has these things called loves, which are hearts, like how when you like a photo, where someone who supports you can purchase a certain amount of loves, and then you make money off of people liking the content in which you create. So it's a cool program, and I mean, it's definitely getting a lot of headway with a lot of young black content creators, because that's the whole thing about content. The youth are the ones that are creating it. So once the youth adopt a platform, that's how a platform becomes popular. That's how Instagram became popular, because at a time, now that we're in our 40s now, but we were the youth who adopted Facebooks and Instagrams and made them what they are. And now they're starting to charge advertising dollars and make billions of dollars off of it, off of the content that we've provided for them over the years. And so now it's time for that to make its way back into our hands. So now you see Instagram also creating subscription portals now. And this is all after Fanbase did it. This is all after seeing what Isaac Hayes did. And so I became an investor into Fanbase early. I became an early investor. And so just like, you know, these other companies had opportunities to have inside investors like the Ubers and the Facebooks, and you know, the people who work for those companies got inside information on these companies. And it was at a time where this was pre-Obama, before Obama made the trading, the way in which people raise funds for trading, it made it a little bit differently of how they do it. And so it allowed the public to have an opportunity to invest into these startup corporations, these startup businesses. And so Start Engine was the method in which Isaac put Fanbase up. And so, you know, of course, he reached out to a few of his friends and he told us about it, and we had the opportunity to invest early. So y'all look out for Fanbase.
Definitely. You know. So I guess because I want to get a little bit more as far as when you got out the dark period of your life, and when things started looking up for D Scantz. When did that start happening?
I did 15 years in Atlanta. I say I did 15 years because it feels like a bid, right? A lot of what I would consider the dark ages were also accompanied by a lot of joy. The music business has had a lot of trauma as it pertains to me being the age I am now, knowing what I know now, and reflecting on it all then, right? So I count it all joy, right? That's what you're supposed to do. And I look at it like I wouldn't have the relationships and the opportunities that I have now if it wasn't for me going through that valley. Right? So it's really all scriptural if you want to bring it back, right? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, right? And having the upbringing that I had and having the gift of discernment that I feel like God had given me, I would see a lot of things. And I would make decisions to go down certain paths. And some of those paths that I went down weren't made for any light. You know, and not to put any shadowy cloud over the culture of Atlanta, but you know, being in the business and of the culture, it could breed a lot of things.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know, so and in a place like Atlanta, with it being small, right? It's like the connectivity of that, it's almost like an incubator. So if you don't get control of this beast, you know what I'm saying? It's gonna get out of hand. Hence a lot of what we're seeing now.
Yeah. When did State of Emergency come into play?
State of Emergency, that was the band production company antithesis of my whole experience of being in Atlanta. If I could describe what State of Emergency is, even in the name itself, it gives you a mindset of what I was going through at that moment of being in Atlanta and wanting to be the opposite of everything that I was experiencing there, right? So I was experiencing the hyper urban atmosphere, a lot of big fish in a little pond, very ego driven, right? And being the creative, eccentric person that I was, right? I didn't feel like I fit in, as well as the fact that I didn't feel like they wanted me there in the first place. So State of Emergency was my mindset, and it ended up becoming the name of my production company because the type of music that I wanted State of Emergency, the band, because it was also a band, to represent was like that alternative urban. That's when things got a lot more independent for me in Atlanta. I wasn't associated with Noontime. I was still signed to Noontime, but I wasn't in Noontime Studios anymore. I was in my own studio, and I had new management at that time. And so there were some new things that were on the horizon. So things started to kind of independently shape what I wanted to be. And State of Emergency was the epitome of that. So I did my best to put rock guitars in every track that I could potentially do, put live drums in it, you know, make it as rocked out as it could be. And nobody in Atlanta was feeling that shit. They was like, bro, what is this? I'm like, what you don't understand is that this is where music is going, and this is the culture, and you're not giving artists like this a chance.
Yep.
That's what I would be preaching. I was on that soapbox, right? And some of those artists that I would be on that soapbox advocating for would be artists like Janelle Monáe. And then, you know, the whole thing of her independent, you know, thing through Atlanta came out to be a success. And then you start to see artists like a Frank Ocean come about. And you start to see all Odd Future and Tyler, the Creator. And, you know, these R&B artists were starting to have a hard time, you know, because hip hop is still, you know, it's changing its forms too as well at this point.
Yep, always evolving.
You know, so, you know, during this time, I was discovering a lot of dope artists. And one of these dope artists that I took under my wing in my Atlanta construct, because this artist was clearly doing his own thing too as well. But in the conversation in Atlanta was really where the conversations of who was going to get the next deals happening from. Even though LA was Hollywood, people was looking at Atlanta because Atlanta, I mean, was responsible for 90% of what was on the charts during that time.
Yeah, that's true.
So even the people from LA would travel from LA to come work in Atlanta. That's how I met James Fauntleroy and the 1500 or Nothing team and all of these guys that are out here doing crazy big stuff now. They came through Atlanta. And so there was this one artist that my publisher set me up with that was like, yo, Donnie, he's weird like you. Nobody knows what to do with him, but he's so talented, right? We want to put him with you. Because rumor was, is when you put him with me, they might do something. And at that time, State of Emergency, we had this artist that was our lead singer that was supposed to be the lead singer. We did maybe 1 or 2 shows with her, but Carrie Hilson, who was also like a songwriter, right? She was the lead of State of Emergency because I wanted it to be like a Black No Doubt. Just taking it back to State of Emergency real quick.
So Carrie Hilson was one of your lead singers in that group?
Right. But we was doing like crazy records that had like rock guitars and stuff in it. And then, you know, then this meeting with then I created Zone 4 with Polo the Don. And that's a whole nother story. We had Discover Rich Boy in my apartment in Atlanta. And we did Rich Boy's album. So a lot of these things, when you're talking about coming up out of the light, it was like I was doing things more independently of myself, but I still had the tethering of Noontime on me, and I still had the cable tow of, you know what I'm saying, other business relationships who had other benefits, but that was also marginalizing me in certain kinds of ways too. So it was a give and take. And so, you know, Carrie Hilson came out of that. Rich Boy came out of that. So the artist that I was talking about that my publisher introduced me to that nobody was really messing with, couldn't really even navigate through what was going on in Atlanta to get to the deals. It was this artist named Miguel. So I'm holding up the banner for all the weird people in Atlanta. Nobody's hearing us. So I'm like, you know what? I don't belong here. I'm going to LA.
Uh-oh. That's when it gets to LA.
So, you know, but that's 15 years. But that's after, you know, ups and downs. I did Lloyd's whole King of Hearts album with Polo the Dawn. We all lived in LA for a period of time at that point because we used to come out here and do projects. So we would spend 3 months, 6 months in LA, but I would still live in Atlanta. We would go to Miami with B. Cox and spend half a whole year there, right? Because, I mean, we were living off of record industry budgets, blowing money fast. So, yeah, a lot of things were created out of that. And it was a lot of positive affirmation for me that what I was doing was sound. Even though I wasn't necessarily having all the Grammy nominations or having as many hit records as some of my peers, I was still satisfied with my abilities of what I could create for myself.
Damn, dog. I don't know if you understand how many seeds you dropped in the industry. I'm listening like, wow, all that you've done.
Yeah, we missed a whole bunch. Like, I don't know how y'all gonna edit this interview, but I mean, we missed Pimping All Over the World.
I don't give a damn.
It's gonna have to be 2 parts.
We can go ahead and have a 2-part on this because I'm
with it.
You got a lot of music, man. I was just like, wow.
I definitely did my Googles and did my research as far as your discography. And I was like, ooh, this guy got a lot of credits, man. But yeah, you conquered a lot of things. Like you said, even in your dark years, there was some joy, you know, and a lot of that even probably came through the dark years. But still, those credits don't change. You can't never take credits away. We're not even mentioning the ones that, you know, don't have your name on them because we already know how the music industry works. you know,
what I've learned real briefly before we wrap it up, it's never all or nothing. We live in a life that society tries to teach us that it's all or nothing. Either you great or you not great. Either you the best or you not the best. Well, what about all the goddamn middle ground? It's a whole bunch of middle ground in there that people want to skip over.
How about there's no ground to scale it on? Because if we even put the middle, there's still a class system in the context of what people equate their value or their measurement of success to. And to me, that does a lot when it comes to the constructs of ego. And a lot of what we talked about is my upbringing of being a lover of just art and being a student of classical and jazz and like all of these things coming up that gave me an appreciation for the art itself. And so coming into these environments and realizing that the art isn't necessarily the focal point. There's a lot of adjusting. There's a lot of things that I play in tug of war with at that point that's making me feel like, oh, well,
business versus art. This is like a venting session. Have you done any other biographical type of interviews?
I don't know if there's been any like that just went through the whole chronologically or whatever.
Nope. But we going into detail. So we got, like I said, we got a lot of meat on this one.
This for the crib. This for the crib.
We appreciate you.
I appreciate you, man, for sure.
Man, all good.
Man, make sure y'all follow, like, subscribe. Concrete Reality TV, our Houston Hometown Heroes episodes. We got plenty more coming for you guys. Thanks for your support. And as always, peace. As you can see, I was raised in the streets. I ain't got a whole lot of partners with me, 'cause I know them.